Hello, welcome to this video. So today I want to talk about some books that I've read this summer. So I haven't made a video in a while. Well, I mean, it's only been a couple of months. But today I really wanted to get back into it. Sometimes I enter a rather unhelpful, nihilistic perspective where I'm like, what's the point? Because there's so much stuff on YouTube, so much stuff to watch, so much stuff to read, so much stuff to do that sometimes I feel like I'm not really adding anything. But you know, I think that I find making videos fun, and I think that's enough of a point if you enjoy doing something. I also am quite a shy person in actuality, and I find that making videos making videos allows me to be a little bit less passive and just feel a bit more confident in myself. So there is a point. So I need to stop being so pessimistic. And yeah, today I want to talk about some books I read this summer. So let's do that. So the first one I want to talk about is one of my favourite books that I've ever read. And it is She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark. Now, I've read Eliza Clark's two previous publications. She published Boy Parts and she published Penance, which I always want to call Penzance. Don't know why, it's not set in Penzance. The word looks the same. And this is her third publication, and this is a short story collection. And I didn't think I was going to like this as much as her two previous works, because I never thought of myself as like a short story lover, but wow, this book has turned me into a lover of short stories. All I want to read now is weird short stories, because these stories are weird. And these short stories cover a range of different topics and themes and plots. What surprised me is that there was some sci-fi going on here. So there's stuff that is really grounded and very much set on planet Earth, and there's stuff that is set in space. That was fun. There's also like just such wacky stories in here, which were so playful and like elastic, and just felt like anything could happen in them, which was so enjoyable to read. And I've made a list of like my favourite to my least favourite in the short story collection, so I thought I'd just go through that. So number one, my favourite short story is She's Always Hungry. Going down from there is Extinction Event, Company Man, Hollow Bones, Shake Well, The King, The Shadow Over Little, Chitterly, The Problem Solver, Night Stalkers, Goth, GF, and Build a Body Like Mine. So that's my order, but I did love them all. And yeah, my favourite story in the collection was She's Always Hungry, because of the world in that story. It's like this alternative Viking-esque reality where the women rule. It was really cool. I really loved a story as well called Company Man, which was about this woman who was really sad, and she starts this relationship with this man, and it's sort of bringing her out of herself. And there's some hints that the world that they live in isn't quite the world where we live in, because they mention that the woman would be sent to like a labour camp if she drinks too much. And I like little hints like that in stories, which sort of make you realise that you're in our world, but maybe it's not quite the same as our world. And there's a big plot twist at the end of that story, and I love a good plot twist. I love like a short story which sets up this world, makes you really know the characters, and then like has a plot twist. Fun. And you know, I really love Black Mirror, and this kind of gave me the same feelings I have when watching Black Mirror. I love how, you know, each episode is a new story, which I guess is like the short story format. I think maybe because every story in this was so like distinct, it really like highlighted to me the power of a short story collection. Another book I read recently, one of my new favourite books, is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. And a thing I love about books is when you are introduced to this world and you don't really know what the world is. It's like different to our own reality, and the character is trying to determine what that world is, and it's a mystery. Because I find it so easy to keep on reading, because I want to work out what is going on. Like, what is going on? And that's what this book is. The main character, Piranesi, he's in this world which consists of many halls filled with statues. And that is all he knows. He thinks that is the whole world. And he is there on his own, except for this one other man called the Other. And Piranesi then starts to try and work out like who the other is and what actually is this world. And there's a really cool part in the beginning of the book where he finds like a crisp packet, and like that juxtaposition between these grand like mystic halls full of statues and this crisp packet just was really cool. And I read this book so fast in like 2 days. I think it really is a page turner, and if you're looking for a book that makes you just keep on reading, it gives you that kind of like, wow, I love stories feeling, this book did that for me. Another book I read recently is The Safekeep by Jal van de Wooden. And this novel is about a woman who lives in a house in the 1960s Netherlands, and she's very pedantic about keeping things in order. She really wants to keep the house nice and tidy and to live like a peaceful life there. And then one day her brother, he asks her if his new girlfriend can come stay in the house with her, and the woman who lives in the house is like, no, this is my safe space, can we not bring a stranger into it, please? And the brother's like, no, this is my house too, because it was like left to them by their mother, and I guess because he's male, like he kind of has the say over what happens to the house. And so he's like, no, my girlfriend can come stay in this house. And so the girlfriend comes to stay in the house, and then the woman who lives there, I need to remember her name. What was her name? Oh my god. Isabel is the woman who lives in the house. Isabel really doesn't like this other woman, who I believe was called Ava. Was that her name? Yes, Eva. And so Isabel and Eva really don't like each other, but then gradually, as the story progresses, maybe they like each other more than they originally thought. And I really liked this story because it was like enemies to lovers, but like in a literary fiction style. And the writing was really beautiful and the characters were really well formed. There was also kind of like a twist at the end. And we love a good plot twist. Another book I read is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. And I read this because I've really been wanting to read some more dark fantasy, some more stories that center around vampires. So it's about this woman. What is the woman's name? You know, I never remember the names of people in books unless they have like a really specific name, like Katniss Everdeen or something. I like never remember it. What was this woman's name? Marion Shaw. See, Marion Shaw. That I can't remember that name. Okay, so it's about this woman named Marion Shaw. She lives in this fantasy world. She's not really having a great time because she's quite poor, and so because she wants to live a better life, she decides to take on this job as a blood maid, where she has to go to this big manor house in the north of this realm that she lives in, and she needs to give her blood to a vampire willingly, but she gets paid quite well for doing that. And I thought that was a really interesting concept, and the concept is really well explored. I really loved the female friendship in this book between the other blood maids at the manor house. I also thought the vampire woman who ran the manor house, you know, she was also an interesting character because she's kind of evil, but then she also seems like she's kind of nice as well, and you're kind of unsure if you should trust her or not, and the main character is also unsure of that. If I had one negative to say, I would say that the ending kind of felt a bit predictable for me. I think from the very first few pages, I could have probably predicted that that's where the story was going, but then I think if it had ended any other way, like it would have felt like odd. You know, some stories just have a clear direction of where they're heading, and is it a bad thing? I mean, if you really value like an unexpected plot, then maybe, but also it can be quite comforting for a story to go like the way you thought it was gonna go. Sometimes it can be quite upsetting when it suddenly veers into a completely new direction. Okay, and there's one more book that I wanted to talk about here because I feel like I've been talking for a bit, and it's Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. And I wanted to read this because dystopian fiction, love it, and this is regarded as like one of the greatest dystopian fictions, I would say. I'd say it's up there with like The Handmaid's Tale, 1984, so I wanted to give it a read, and I definitely think it can sit alongside those books. What is so interesting about this book is it was published in 1993, and it predicted a lot of the pathways that the world would inevitably go down. So in this story, we are introduced to Lauren, and she lives in this gated community, which is safe. I mean, it's safer than outside the gated community, but it's not like that safe. But they try to keep themselves like within the walls. And then the first part of the book is like a slice of life kind of storytelling. We see from Lauren's point of view, and what makes her point of view so unique is she has this thing called like hyper empathy. So whenever anyone gets harmed, she feels their pain, and I found that such a unique aspect of the book. and it really comes into play at a lot of different points in the story, and it makes you realise that the world will be a lot better place if everyone had that affliction. Lauren is also trying to create like her own religion called Earthseed, which is just about like being kinder to one another, and she wants to spread that message around. And I think that's all I want to say, because I think it's fun to discover the book yourselves and the twists and turns that it takes. And this novel reminded me a lot of Prophet Song by Paul Lynch, which is another dystopian. And what I like both about these two stories is at the beginning of them, you're introduced to these characters who live a somewhat normal life. Something is not quite right, but it's somewhat normal. And then as the book progresses, things get worse and worse and worse. And you realize how lots of little things can slowly lead to a disastrous situation. I love how this book just focused on the importance of empathy and trying your best to put yourself in other people's shoes, because I think that is especially important in today's time. And I mean, any time really. Just humans just need to care more about each other. And that is really the message of this book, and definitely one I would recommend. Okay, so those are some books I've read recently. And yeah, my birthday is also in a few days. I'm gonna turn 28. And actually, I'm fine with it. You know, when I was younger, I used to be like, oh my God, I'm getting a year older. But now I actually feel quite content. I think maybe that's because I've had more experiences. Like I've lived in Warsaw and Berlin and traveled more and had a few different jobs at this point. And I think maybe when I was in my early 20s, I had a fear of getting older because I didn't feel like I so much I wanted to do. And I think it gets easier like the more you've done things. I mean, I still very much would like to live forever, but never mind. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye bye.